this episode, we are bringing together three standards from the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, and the International Electrotechnical Commission, IEC, that matter for anyone trying to understand artificial intelligence, AI, governance in a structured way. For a beginner, these standards can look like a wall of numbers with no obvious connection, but they actually form a very useful sequence. One gives you common language, one gives you an organization-wide management system, and one gives you a way to examine the impact of a specific AI system. That makes them especially helpful for governance because they do not all solve the same problem, and they are not meant to be used in isolation from one another. If you learn to hear their different roles clearly, you can understand how an organization moves from basic conceptual clarity to disciplined governance, to a more focused assessment of how a particular system may affect people and society. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A simple way to start is to recognize that these three standards sit at different levels of the governance stack. ISO/IEC 22989 is about concepts and terminology, which means it helps people describe AI consistently rather than talking past one another. ISO/IEC 42001 is about the management system an organization puts around AI, which means it focuses on policies, responsibilities, controls, monitoring, and continual improvement across the organization. ISO/IEC 42005 is about impact assessment for an AI system and its foreseeable applications, which means it asks how that system may affect individuals, groups, or society. When beginners miss that difference, they often expect one standard to do everything. In practice, governance gets stronger when each standard is used for the kind of job it was built to do. ISO/IEC 22989 is the foundation because governance becomes shaky the moment people use the same words to mean different things. The official description says this document establishes terminology for AI and describes concepts in the field of AI, and that it can be used in the development of other standards and in support of communication among diverse interested parties or stakeholders. That may sound dry at first, but it solves a real problem. Product teams, engineers, compliance staff, executives, auditors, and regulators often bring different assumptions into the same conversation, and those assumptions can create confusion long before any system reaches production. A concepts and terminology standard helps create a common language so organizations can describe systems, models, roles, lifecycle stages, and governance concerns more consistently. In governance work, that consistency matters because weak definitions often lead to weak documentation, weak review decisions, and weak accountability later. A beginner should not think of 22,989 as a checklist standard or as a technical control catalog. Its main job is not to tell a team which risk treatment to choose or which approval gate to create. Its job is to reduce confusion and support clearer thinking across organizations and across the wider standards ecosystem. When ISO says the document can be used in the development of other standards, that is a strong signal that 22,989 sits underneath later governance work rather than on top of it. If a team cannot agree on what kind of AI system it is discussing, what role a model plays in a workflow, or how key concepts relate to one another, then later policy and risk conversations become muddled very quickly. One of the most practical uses of 22989, then, is simply to help teams speak the same language before they try to govern anything more complicated. Clear language may not feel dramatic, but it is one of the quiet building blocks of trustworthy governance. ISO/IEC 42001 moves up from shared language to shared governance structure. The official description explains that it specifies requirements for establishing, implementing, maintaining, and continually improving an AI management system within organizations, and that it is designed for entities providing or using AI-based products or services. That is a major shift in scope from 22989. Instead of helping people define concepts, 42001 asks whether the organization has built a real operating system around AI use. For beginners, That means this standard is about how an organization governs AI as part of ongoing business practice rather than as a one-time project. It is not focused only on the technology team, and it is not limited to one specific model or application. It is trying to make AI oversight systematic, repeatable, and capable of improvement over time. That management system focus is what makes 42001 especially important in governance. The official guidance explains that an AI management system is a structured set of policies, processes, and controls that help organizations govern how AI systems are designed, developed, deployed, and used. It also highlights familiar management system themes such as leadership and organizational context, AI policy and objectives, risk management, data governance and lifecycle controls, transparency and information provision, performance evaluation, and continual improvement. In plain language, the standard is trying to move organizations away from ad hoc AI use and toward a more disciplined model where roles are defined, risks are reviewed, performance is monitored, and corrections are made when needed. A student should hear this as organization-wide governance rather than tool-specific governance. The standard is not asking whether one model looks impressive in a demo. It is asking whether the organization has a durable way to govern AI responsibly across its operations. Another important point is that 42001 does not replace law, and it does not promise that a compliant management system makes every AI decision correct. The official ISO explanation says the standard supports AI compliance by helping organizations demonstrate responsible governance, align practices with legal and regulatory expectations, manage risks such as bias, safety, security, and misuse, and increase trust with customers, partners, and regulators, while also making clear that it does not replace laws or regulations. That is a useful beginner lesson because management system standards are often misunderstood as magic shields. A stronger way to think about 42001 is that it helps an organization build the governance machinery needed to meet many different obligations more consistently. It gives structure to accountability, documentation, review, and improvement, but the organization still has to make good decisions inside that structure. Good governance depends on both the framework and the judgment used within it. It is also worth understanding what certification means here, because beginners often confuse certification of a management system with proof that an AI model or product is excellent. The official ISO explanation says certification for 42001 is voluntary, that organizations may choose it when they want independent confirmation that their AI management system meets the requirements of the standard, and that ISO itself does not certify organizations because certification is carried out by independent certification bodies. That distinction matters. A certification decision is about the organization's management system, not a guarantee that every model it uses is fair, safe, or fit for every purpose. Governance students should hear this clearly because it prevents a common mistake. Assuming an external certificate removes the need for ongoing impact assessment, monitoring, and human judgment. Certification can add confidence, but it does not replace the daily work of governing AI in real contexts. ISO/IEC 42005 then narrows the focus from organization-wide governance to the impact of a particular AI system and its foreseeable applications. The official description says it provides guidance for organizations conducting AI system impact assessments, and that these assessments focus on understanding how AI systems may affect individuals, groups, or society at large. That is a different kind of question from the one 42001 asks. Instead of asking whether the organization has a robust governance structure overall, 42005 asks what this specific system may do in the world, who may be affected, and how those effects should be identified, evaluated, and documented across the life cycle. For beginners, this is a very useful distinction. One standard helps you build the house of governance, while the other helps you examine the consequences of what is happening inside a particular room of that house. Both matter, but they are not interchangeable. The impact lens in 42005 is especially important because governance failure is not limited to technical malfunction. The official page explains that the standard supports transparency, accountability, and trust by helping organizations identify, evaluate, and document potential impacts throughout the AI system lifecycle. and it specifically notes that the focus includes foreseeable applications and effects on individuals, groups, and society. That tells you the standard is asking a broader set of questions than whether the model meets a benchmark. A system may work exactly as designed and still create problems because it influences people unfairly, changes incentives in unhealthy ways, makes human review harder, or produces social effects the team did not think through carefully enough. An impact assessment helps surface those questions earlier and more systematically. For students, the core lesson is that good AI governance pays attention not only to performance, but also to consequence, context, and who bears the burden when the system behaves poorly. The relationship between 42001 and 42005 is one of the clearest governance lessons in this topic. ISO's own package description says the two standards are designed to work hand in hand, with 42001 setting the foundation by establishing an organization-wide management system for AI, and 42005 offering a detailed methodology for conducting AI system impact assessments. It goes on to explain that 42001 helps make impact assessments a consistent part of AI governance, while 42005 helps ensure those assessments are thorough, systematic, and actionable. That relationship is extremely useful for a beginner because it shows why mature governance cannot rely on a single document. Organization-wide oversight without system-level impact assessment can become too abstract, while impact assessments without a management system can become inconsistent, one-off exercises with weak follow-through. Together, they connect high-level accountability with practical evaluation of real systems and real consequences. When you bring 22,989 into that picture, the three standards start to look like a small governance stack with distinct layers. 22,989 helps teams establish a common language and conceptual baseline. 42001 helps the organization create policies, roles, processes, controls, monitoring, and improvement mechanisms around AI. 42005 helps the organization examine and document how a specific AI system may affect people and society in practice. This is why it is a mistake to treat 22,989 as less important simply because it is less operational. Without a common conceptual vocabulary, governance discussions easily become inconsistent, especially when multiple teams, vendors, assessors, or regulators are involved. In other words, 22,989 supports clearer communication, 42,001 supports consistent governance operations, and 42,005 supports focused impact analysis. That is a very helpful way to remember how they fit together when you hear them on the exam. These standards also fit well with a broader compliance and risk management mindset, but they should not be confused with a complete legal program on their own. The official ISO explanation for 42,001 says it helps organizations align with legal and regulatory expectations more effectively, not that it replaces those obligations. The official material for 42,005 says it complements standards on AI management systems, governance, and risk management by focusing specifically on societal and human impacts. That means an organization facing regulatory duties, contractual requirements, or internal policy commitments can use these standards to create structure, consistency, and evidence, but still has to interpret and meet the rules that apply in its jurisdiction and sector. A beginner should hear the standards as tools for disciplined governance rather than as substitutes for law. They help organizations organize their work and make stronger decisions, but they do not eliminate the need for legal analysis, sector-specific controls, or thoughtful human oversight. A few common misconceptions are worth clearing away before we close. The first is that 22989 is only for standards writers, when in reality, any organization benefits from having clearer terms and shared concepts before it starts policy writing, risk review, or procurement discussions. The second is that 42001 is only for large enterprises pursuing certification, when the guidance says it applies to organizations of all sizes that develop, provide, integrate, use, or manage AI systems. The third is that 42005 is only for the most extreme high-risk cases, when the official description is broader and focuses on any organization that wants to assess and manage the potential impacts of its AI systems on people and society. Good governance starts earlier than many teams expect. It begins when they choose to be explicit about language, disciplined about management, and serious about system-level consequences before a problem forces that discipline on them. By the end of this episode, the clearest way to remember these standards is to treat them as three different but connected answers to three different governance questions. ISO/IEC 22989 answers the question of how we speak clearly and consistently about AI. ISO/IEC 42001 answers the question of how an organization builds and improves a management system around AI use, development, and oversight. ISO/IEC 42005 answers the question of how we assess and document the effects a particular AI system may have on people and society across its life cycle. When those three answers come together, governance becomes much easier to understand and much easier to operationalize. That is the real value of learning them side by side. One gives you the language, one gives you the operating structure, and one gives you the focused assessment lens needed to govern AI with more clarity and discipline.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.